Recently, in one of our Q&A series, a viewer asked us which CPU we recommend for budget gaming, the Core i5-12400F or Ryzen 5 7500F. Now, the 12400F, that was released back in early 2022, and when I first reviewed it, I was very impressed with what it had to offer, and for a while there, it was our go-to budget part. Now, the reason why gamers are still considering it almost 4 years after release is because Intel is still selling it and at a discounted price. At the time of making this video in the US, you can purchase it for just $135, and even here in Australia, it's $190 Australian. And that makes it cheaper than the 7500F, which costs $165 US or $200 Australian. So the Ryzen 5 part is priced much closer to the 12400F locally, likely making the Ryzen part a better deal for Aussies. But you know what is a great deal for everybody?
This portion of the video has been sponsored by the Gigabyte MO27Q28G, an excellent 1440p gaming monitor using a brand new primary RGB tandem OLED panel. The MO27Q28G offers next level brightness and stunning HDR performance, topping the charts for OLED brightness in our HDR tests. It has rich black levels even in bright 500 lux environments thanks to its 99% anti-reflection coating, and with a fast 280Hz refresh rate, it's suited to all gaming needs. Gigabyte complement this package with all the latest features, including a KVM switch, OLED VRR anti-flicker, and a sleek metal stand that takes up less of your valuable desk space. We highly recommend the Gigabyte MO27Q28G OLED gaming monitor. It's great value, so to learn more, check the links in the description below.
Okay, so the Core i5-12400F, it was known as a rather nippy 6-core 12-thread processor packing 18 megabytes of L3 cache and a boost clock frequency of 4.4 GHz. And what we want to know is, how does it stack up today? To find out, we're sticking it on the MSI Z790 Carbon Wi-Fi motherboard with 32 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 CL30 memory, the same memory that we'll be using to test the Ryzen 5 processors, including the 7500F of course, and those parts were tested on Gigabyte's X670E Aorus Master. Both motherboards have been updated to the latest BIOS, and we're also using the Asus ROG Astral RTX 5090 OC Edition graphics card to remove or at least minimize the GPU bottleneck. And this allows us to better compare actual CPU performance. And therefore, we're focusing on low resolution testing, but we'll also be doing so using the medium and ultra presets for each game. Okay, let's get in the data. First up, we have Marvel Rivals, and for this test, we're simply using the built-in benchmark, so you can compare your results to what we're showing here. Using the medium settings, the 12400F limited performance to 142 FPS on average, with 1% lows of 101 FPS. Still, the 7500F was almost 20% faster, and with an average frame rate of 169 FPS, you're getting a better high refresh rate experience with the Ryzen processor. Even when using the ultra settings, the 12400F was quite a bit slower than the 7500F, limiting the average frame rate to 109 FPS, while dropping the 1% lows to 84 FPS, and this meant the 7500F was 15% faster. Next up, we have Rainbow Six Siege, and here the 12400F proves why it was a fan favourite all those years ago, as it's still able to throughput over 300 FPS, just over in fact with 301 FPS on average. The 7500F was a massive 35% faster here, but for most of you, the jump from 300 to 400 FPS isn't going to be all that noticeable. The margin did grow with the Ultra Plus settings. Here the 7500F was 42% faster, but still we're talking about 280 to 398 FPS. And yeah, one number is much larger than the other, but in practice the difference won't be all that noticeable to most gamers. Of course, in the context of this comparison, these results do make the 7500F a much better value choice for this title, given it only costs slightly more. Where the CPU doesn't really matter, and the value equation ends up in the 12400F's favour, is in GPU limited titles, like what we see here in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Here the 7500F is less than 5% faster than the 12400F, so it's fair to say performance overall was much the same. The experience here really would be indistinguishable. The experience in Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered was also great with the 12400F, 148 FPS on average using the medium preset, so similar performance to that of the 8400F, making the 7500F 17% faster. The 7500F was also 15% faster when using the very high preset, and the margin here is a little more meaningful as it takes the average from 126 FPS up to 145 FPS. Moving on to Cyberpunk 2077, here the 12400F allowed for 131 FPS on average when using the medium preset, making the 7500F 24% faster, though only 12% faster when looking at the 1% lows. Interestingly, we're still looking at a 23% margin in favour of the 7500F when using the Ray Tracing Ultra preset, going from an average of 88 FPS with the 12400F to 108 FPS. And we're also seeing a similar 20% uplift for the 1% lows in this example. The 12400F does struggle a bit in Space Marine 2, limiting performance to the same levels seen from the 8400F, so on average frame rates were in the mid-80s, and this meant the 7500F was 15% faster when using the medium preset and 13% faster with the ultra preset. Performance in The Last of Us Part 2 is reasonably competitive. Here the 7500F was just 11% faster when using the medium preset and 13% faster when using the very high preset. So although the Ryzen processor is clearly faster in this title, the margins really aren't that significant. When testing with Spider-Man 2, we see that the 7500F is 13% faster when using the medium settings, jumping from 151 FPS on average with the 12400F to 170 FPS. Then, quite interestingly, when using the ultimate ray tracing settings, we saw the margin increased to 18%, and the gains here are relevant, as you'll certainly notice the jump from 68 FPS to 80 FPS, so the 7500F is delivering a noticeably better experience in this example. Next we have Mafia The Old Country, and for some reason the 12400F really struggles with this game, limiting performance to just shy of 90 FPS, with similar weak 1% lows to that of the 8400F. This meant when using the medium settings that the 7500F was on average 33% faster, but a massive 62% faster when comparing 1% lows. The more GPU limited Epic preset data does reduce the margin down to 28%, but still, the 7500F did end up being much faster and did deliver a noticeably better experience. The 7500F is also much faster in ACC. Again, the 12400F is similar to the 8400F. Using the medium preset, the Ryzen 5 7500F was 32% faster, and then 24% faster when using the Epic preset. So an easy win here for the Ryzen 5 processor, and it did a much better job of enabling a high refresh rate experience when using the maximum quality settings. Despite being a CPU demanding game, performance between the 12400F and 7500F is very similar in Baldur's Gate 3. The 7500F was just 8% faster when using the medium settings, and a mere 5% faster with Ultra, so really nothing in it here, and there's no chance you could tell which CPU we're using based on these results. If you're a serious Counter-Strike 2 player, the 7500F is going to be a much better choice, as it was 42% faster than the 12400F when using the medium settings and 36% faster when using the very high settings. Okay, so here's a look at the 12-game average data, and as we repeatedly saw throughout the gaming benchmarks, the 12400F is very similar to the 8400F in terms of FPS performance. And that meant, on average, the 7500F delivered 20% greater performance when using the medium settings and 18% better performance with the ultra settings, so it is fair to say the Ryzen 5 part is around 20% faster. Just quickly, here's how the 12400F and 7500F compared across the 12 games when looking at the individual margins. The biggest margin in favour of the Ryzen processor was seen in Counter-Strike 2, and then Rainbow Six Siege, suggesting that 7500F is a better choice for esports titles. That said though, we did also see a very big margin in Mafia The Old Country. There were just two titles that saw single-digit margins in favour of the 7500F, and those games included Baldur's Gate 3 and Assassin's Creed Shadows. The latter of the two really is a GPU-limited game. Switching over to the Ultra data does mix up the order a bit, but even so, Counter-Strike 2 and Rainbow Six Siege are the titles where the 7500F smashes the 12400F, while we're also seeing over 20% gains in Cyberpunk 2077 and ACC. So there you have it. Despite both architectures arriving in 2022 and packing 6 cores with 12 threads, the 7500F is a good bit faster, delivering on average 20% stronger gaming performance, while also consuming slightly less power. And it is worth noting again that this data was recorded using DDR5 6000 CL30 memory for both processors, and if you were to use DDR4 memory, that would further reduce the performance of the 12400F. That said, if you're interested in some updated DDR4 versus DDR5 testing with the 12400F, let me know, as it wouldn't be too much work to retest with DDR4 to see how much difference there is in modern games. So all said and done, Is the 12400F worth buying, especially when available at really low prices? For example, it costs $135 US at the time of making this video, but Newegg has been selling it for $116 US, and they still have that listing, though stock is on back order right now, but it should become available at that price again soon. The assumption here would be that you're either building a brand new PC or performing an entire platform upgrade, so you need a new CPU, motherboard, and memory. If we look at just the price of the CPU, so let's say $135 for the 12400F and then $165 for the 7500F, you end up paying a mere $30 US more for the 7500F, and that seems like a no-brainer to me. It's 22% for 20% more performance on average, but of course once you factor in the price of all the other components, the price difference becomes a lot smaller. And then we have the advantages of the 7500F. Not only is it faster, but it also has an upgrade path. If you were to opt for the Core i5 part, your best upgrade option would be a 13th or 14th gen Core i7 or i9 processor, and buying one of those secondhand really should be out of the question. Plus, sticking those power-hungry parts in a budget LGA 1700 board probably isn't a good idea. All of that said though, there is an angle right now for budget builders where the 12400F might be the better value choice when compared to the 7500F, and that's because DDR5 memory prices are completely out of control. Looking at memory sold by Newegg.com right now, the cheapest 32GB DDR5 kit costs $170 US, and it's a very bad kit. DDR5 5600 CL46, yuck. That said though, decent kits are just $10 more, so $180 US for DDR5 memory then. On the other hand, 32GB DDR4 kits start at $108 US for a 3200 CL16 kit, though a good quality DDR4 3600 CL16 kit is more like $170 US, so there ends up being very little difference in price there between DDR4 and DDR5 when you're comparing the decent quality memory kits. But at least on the DDR4 side, there are still some more affordable options, at least at the time of filming this video. For example, if we were to opt for the DDR4 3200CL16 kit and pair it with the ASRock B760M Pro RS Wi-Fi motherboard, which costs $130 US, the 12400F combo comes out at about $370 US. The 7500F combo, on the other hand, if we avoid the ASRock motherboards due to their ongoing issues with frying CPUs, the cheapest decent AM5 motherboard would be the MSI Pro B650S Wi-Fi for $130 US, so the same price as the Intel motherboard, and that brings the total cost of the AMD option to $470 US. That's a 27% premium. Obviously, the current DDR5 pricing is the real killer here, but for the AM5 platform, there's simply no way around that issue. Of course though, keep in mind that the Core i5-12400F will be even slower when using DDR4 3200CL16 memory, so the 7500F might well end up being 30% faster anyway, at which point it does offer similar value, if not better value, and that's something I could look at shortly if you guys are interested. You can also save some money on the AM5 build by opting for the ultra-cheap Ryzen 5 8400F, which is similar to the 12400F in terms of gaming performance, so that further puts the squeeze on the Intel option. Basically though, unfortunately, right now, as it turns out, is a bad time to make any kind of upgrade or new PC build due to skyrocketing DRAM prices. And of course this happens just as GPU pricing starts to come down. We're seeing cards at MSRP or even below MSRP, but there's always something that's got to spoil the fun. And on that note, I'm going to end this video. If you liked it, you know what to do. Subscribe for more content. We also have the join button or Patreon if you want to get more hardware unboxed goodness. We have a great community over there on Discord that you can access, or we do live streams, Q&A stuff, behind the scenes content. There's a lot of cool things there, so check that out if you're interested, but if not, it's perfectly fine. And of course, I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm your host, Steve. See you again next time.